Welcome to Season 6 of Far Reach Voyages, where we share our love of offshore sailing and adventure travel. Let's take a look at the challenge that I have in this episode. This is a cross section of the spar on my boat. There's the luff groove that the strong track fits in. And you'll also notice there's these little extrusion tabs in here. And while there may be some strengthening of the spar of that, the primary purpose of it is to put conduit inside your mast. Here's a little piece of PVC pipe, and I ripped it on a little jig I made on my table saw and cut that little slot in it. And then when I put the steaming light in the mast, I measured the distance from the deck down up to where the steaming light was, and I pushed a piece of PVC pipe in there that long. So you just slide it down that extrusion so it's in your mast. And then the wiring runs down inside the PVC pipe, and that way it doesn't get tangled up with your halyards and doesn't bang against the inside of your mast and that sort of thing. So the difficulty I had is one of my winch mounting bases on the side, the holes were along the side. And it hadn't been a problem because I didn't have that conduit in there before because I didn't have a steaming light. So everything worked. But after I put the steaming light in there, what I found out is when I had, those holes were already drilled for my winch base. And I needed to pull this backing plate back into position. But I couldn't get the holes to line up. And the reason why is because of this. The backing plate was pulled up against the edge of the conduit, and I couldn't get it to line up with the holes. And I spent, as I mentioned in the video, about 5 days going down there trying to figure out, running the lines, pulling this up. It wouldn't fit. I'd pull it back out, and then I began to file a bevel on the side. And that's eventually how I accomplished it. I got the bevel cut to the point where I was able to slide it up underneath the conduit. You'll see in a picture here in the video in a minute. And then the holes all lined up. On the other side, let me see, where would it have been? I guess down here for the winch base. I didn't have a conduit issue. It took me an hour, and the backing plate was in, no problem. So that's just something that was unique to the way my mast was set up and just the positioning of the conduit in relationship to the backing plate. If you have a spar like this, it's just one of those little details that you have to think about to keep yourself from getting into trouble. And I just never had considered it when I ran the conduit down for the steaming light. It all worked out in the end. I got it taken care of. But it took a lot of time. It took me several days, 4 or 5 hours a day, going down there and working on it until I got it accomplished. So we need a backing plate for the other side of the winch. There's just these threaded holes. I don't think that's strong enough for a halyard winch. So this isn't a 1/4 inch aluminum scrap that I had. I drilled 2 3/16 hole in there to match the 3/16 aluminum rivets that I have. And I drilled the holes so they'll be between these holes. And I'm going to drill into the mast like that. And then I'm going to run the strings through, pull them out, and I'm going to pull this bar in there just like I did with this. Once I have it pulled up tight, I'll stick the rivets in and I'll rivet it in place. And then we'll drill and tap those holes into this aluminum backing plate. Let's interrupt the video briefly and talk about the different types of rivets you might run across. You'll see different diameters and different gripping ranges. And I talk later in the video about the gripping ranges, but 3/16, 1/4 inch rivets, and this is a 1/4 inch rivet aluminum that happens to be flathead. So that's the two different types of of rivets that you would normally see in boat work. Most of them are going to be dome style. That's what this is. It's got a dome on it. You drill a hole, you put down whatever it is that you're going to fasten to something, you push this rivet through, and you rivet it in place. And all of these are called blind rivets, meaning you can install them from one side. Solid rivets, you have to be on both sides. You put the rivet in, and you got to be on this side to push the other in, and you hammer them together. They're very strong. So planks that are on a boat, those wouldn't be blind rivets. They would be riveted in place, and you'd have to be working on both sides. So what you have here is a flathead and a dome style. And this is what we're going to mostly use is dome style. In fact, until this project, I'd never used a flathead rivet. The reason I chose a flathead rivet, as you will see in the video soon, is that I needed this top of this rivet to be flush with the surface of the mast, because I wanted that winch base to come down and fit flush. If I put a domed rivet in there, the winch base would have come down, and it would add this. I couldn't get it flush to the deck because this would have been proud of the mast, not of the deck, but it would have been proud of the mast. So having this flathead rivet allowed me to do that. But in order to get that rivet flush, I had to chamfer the hole so that it would be countersunk flush with the deck. And I used this. This chamfer bit is 82 degrees. That angle is 82 degrees, and that's what most fasteners are. This happens to be 100 degrees, the angle of this rivet. They do make these. They're hard to find. It's a special order item. I'd have used it for 2 rivets, and I wasn't going to do it. And the thing I was putting in place, the backing plate, this just holds it. This doesn't really add any strength to the backing plate. This rivet, this aluminum rivet that I used, just holds it in place. The strength comes from the fasteners going down through the mast and into the backing place, where they're threaded and tapped and all that, as you'll see in the video. What you're going to see is the installation of a flathead aluminum rivet to hold the backing plates in place, and you'll see also the installation of domed rivets, like for the tristle track. I'm riveting that in place. They're very strong. They're stainless. That's what you would want to use. You want this big lip, this dome top to help secure it tightly to the mast. And the advantage of rivets over fasteners at times is that if the fastener gets corroded, that stainless steel fastener gets corroded in the spar, the aluminum spar, it can be very difficult to get out. Whereas rivets, you can always drill them out. They'll fall down inside the mast and you're good. You just pull them right out and you can install new rivets. So it just depends on the application. And I also chose to use an aluminum rivet because it's an aluminum backing plate on an aluminum spar. So an aluminum rivet just eliminates the opportunity for galvanic corrosion. Now I got that first rivet in there. See, it's flush. And these are the 3 holes that were tapped into the mast but without a backing plate. And that's the remaining hole. I had those 2 strings in there, pulled them up tight, pulled that string out, put the rivet in there and riveted it. Now with that rivet in there holding the backing plate in, I can pull this string out, which I just did. And then I just stick this rivet in there, like that. And now I rivet it. See, that's in there. I did a much better job on this side than I did up here. I just didn't do as good a job. This is the first one I did, and this is the one I had all that trouble with the conduit in there in the way. And it took me a week of coming down here, maybe 4 or 5 days, I guess. About 5 hours a day trying to sort this out. This one just took an hour and I'm done. So it's a learning curve. And this one was simpler, there's no instructions. But now I'll just put the base back on, run those threads through here, and then I can line up, drill, and tap through the backing plate. That's how that winch will be in there. And you could do the same thing for a rope clutch. I mean, you can do exactly the same thing. If you had the 2 holes for the rope clutch, You can put 2 smaller holes. You can put a string in, drop it down, pull the backing plate in place, you know, all that. You drill these holes for the rivets first with the backing plate on the outside. Drill the holes, then use those holes to drill through the mast and line everything up. Then you run the strings through, pull the backing plate up to the inside of the mast, pull it up tight, gently pull one string out, insert the rivet, rivet it. Once it's riveted, it's in place. Pull the other string out, put the rivet in, rivet it. Now you have a backing plate inside your mast. So these are the flathead rivets I used to get a flush surface. And they're aluminum on aluminum. Should do the trick. Success. Let's declare victory. This is the endoscope I've been using. It's got about a 6-foot cable on it with a camera on the end, 2 cameras and a light. You can take still pictures and video. It's pretty versatile. Charge it with a USB cable. And you download an app and save the videos right to your phone. Use your phone as a screen. Not very expensive, about $45 on Amazon. Bought it about a year ago. Used it for a couple different things. Right tool, right job. Here are 2 taps the same size. They're 1/4 20s. A 1/4 20 means it's a 1/4 inch in diameter, and there's 20 threads per inch. So the fasteners that you put in here are 1/4 20s. So these are 1/4 20 taps. And it should say right on here, right there, 1/4 20. Keep in mind, you're always going to drill a smaller diameter hole than the diameter of the fastener you intend to install. There are tables that inform what size drill bit to use for each fastener diameter. In this case, I drilled the hole with a 13/64 inch drill bit. A 1/4 inch hole is the same as 16/64 inch, so you can see the hole is 3/64 inch smaller than the fastener. That's so there's material left for the tap to cut the threads. This is how they ought to teach fractions in school, so you can see how they work and why they are important. It makes the concept more tangible. But there are 2 different kinds of taps, and you need to be able to use both. The one on the left is a tapered tap, and you can see how it narrows down a little bit here. And that helps you guide the tap into a hole so that it goes straight. And that's what you normally are going to use, are tapered taps. And that also means that you're threading either not all the way through the hole or you're coming out the other side. This tap right here, this is a blind tap. I call it a blind tap. Maybe it's called a plunge tap. Anyway, I call it a blind tap. And it's a hole that's not gonna, you need to be able to cut the threads all the way to the bottom of the hole or as close to the bottom of the hole as you can. So if you're tapping into something that's got something on the other side that you can't drill through, you don't want to drill through, but you need to get the threads down in there further, then you use a tap like this. The only trick with a tap like this is because it's not, there it is, because it's not tapered, it can get a little off canter. So typically I'll tap with this first, make sure I got my tap going down the hole straight, and then I'd follow it with this all the way to the bottom of the hole as far as I need to tap, so that the threads of the fastener are installed as deep into the material as possible. So 2 different kinds of taps. What I did here is I just wrapped some tape around the drill bit to keep it centered in the hole, because the drill bit is smaller than a 1/4 inch. It's 13/64. Little trick for using a tap and aluminum is just to put a little wax on it. So had to do. You don't need to put oil on it. Booger it all up and drain oil all over your halyards on the inside. And about a half a turn and a quarter turn back. It's pretty much the standard for tapping. Although you do it by feel, you don't want to break the tap off in the metal. So sometimes you might just work it a little bit and then back it a little bit, forward a little bit. And what you're doing is you're clearing the chips out of the hole. Otherwise the debris would bind up on the following threads. These are just hobbyist tabs too, these are not industrial tabs. If you see that, most of them cleared out, but you'll see there's some debris there in the flutes. That's what backing it away does. And then we'll just keep going until we get this installed correctly. In the next episode, we'll finish up the mast project. We'll install the trysail track, talk about key considerations when ordering pop rivets, perform some turnbuckle maintenance, install the last of the hardware, and I'll show you a little trick when installing winch drums. Finally, we'll re-step the mast. If you enjoyed this episode of Far Reach Voyages, let us know in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing, as it tells us you would like to see more videos and it helps the channel grow. See you in the next episode.